very cognizant of wealth. He seems to recognize affluence and be impressed by it. All right, so here's what he says.
So the man entered the house, and the camels were unloaded. The camels were given straw and feed, and water was brought to bathe his feet and those of his entourage. But when food was set before him, he said, I will not eat until I have told my tale. He said, Speak then.
So again, it seems like all of these discussions are kind of being handled by Lavan.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't really met Bethuel yet. And so this is interesting that the brother seems to be taking charge. What we have here also too, obviously, is Eliezer, if we assume it's again Eliezer, who doesn't he wants to get down to business. He doesn't want to make small talk. He's not going to engage in the local, traditions of having a little food before we get down to business.
That's in the Odyssey too, that they have to eat first before we talk.
Yeah. Yeah. So, local customs, normally dictate. Again, that's pretty much around the world. You can go to China, you can go anywhere. India, South America, native, communities. No. Eliezer, the servant wants to get down to business. And so here he goes. He's going to retell the story.
I am Abraham's servant, he began. God has greatly blessed my master, who has become rich, giving him sheep and cattle, silver and gold, male and female slaves, camels and donkeys. And Sarah, my master's wife, bore my master a son in her old age, and he has assigned to him everything he owns. Now, my master made me swear, saying, You shall not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, in whose land I dwell. But you shall go to my father's house, to my kindred, and get a wife for my son.
Yeah. Now it's interesting. He does not say that Sarah is dead.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't say she's alive, but he also doesn't say she's dead. It does say that she was old when she had him. And it also says that he has assigned to him everything he owns, which is really interesting because we know there's other people that he could have given stuff to, but he hasn't. He's not giving stuff to Ishmael, according to this. He's not giving stuff to Eliezer, if this is Eliezer, in fact, right? Who's been with him and maybe even born into the house. So the servant makes very clear that Isaac is getting everything. And what is everything? Cattle, sheep, donkeys, gold, male and female slaves, all this good stuff is going to my boss's son. So, which by the way, as we already have discussed last week, for him to say this might also be a little bitter, because a little bitterness to that, not really bittersweet, just full on bitter, because it's like, I'm not getting any of it. This guy's getting it. My boss's son's getting it, which of course, if you work for the boss and you're like the vice president of the company, it's not fun to know that nepotism is going to ensure that your boss's son is getting everything. I don't want to say this is like the great classic movie Tommy Boy, but it's definitely a not comfortable moment for the servant to have to repeat this. But of course, he also repeats, my job is to get a woman from here. That's my job.
And I said to my master, What if the woman does not follow me? He replied to me, God, whose ways I have followed, will send an angel with you and make your errand successful, and you will get a wife for my son from my kindred, from my father's house. Thus only shall you be freed from my adjuration. If, when you come to my kindred, they refuse you, only then shall you be freed from my adjuration.
So it's an interesting, I mean, he's very honest. I mean, he changes the story a little bit because Abraham did not say, I'll send an angel with you. He says, Eliezer was the one who said, there's an angel with me. Um, but there does seem to be, maybe it's part of the conversation that we didn't have initially. But he basically says, I have made a deal and you guys can refuse it, but and then I'm free of it, but this is what I have to do. And so he tells him pretty frank. He's pretty clear. He is also clear to some extent that, hey, if you don't want to do it, I'm out, which makes some people feel, some of the sages feel, some of the traditional sages feel that he's kind of hoping that that last part happens. That Eliezer in the back of his mind says, yeah, please say you don't want to let one of your daughters go, because then I'm free of this. And then who knows, maybe the company goes to me. So there is that, like, why does he say that? Why does he have to be so brutally upfront or honest unless he's trying to blow the deal? It's just a possibility. I'm not saying it's for sure, but it is a possibility that he tells him what the whole deal is. He doesn't have to.
There are also other relatives still, right? There's still another, well, we think that there are.
Assumedly, yeah. Assumedly, there's
So-
other. Bethuel is not the only one of Abraham's nephews that's in the community, right? Is in Padan Aram. There might
he has to go through all the relatives before he's free. So he's like, let's get this taken care of, and then I can move on. If you guys aren't interested, I'll go to your cousin.
It could be. It also could be. Hey, there is this. I mentioned this last week. There is this stream in the Midrash where Eliezer really doesn't want this to work, right? So Eliezer sets up a almost impossible situation. I'm gonna go to the well, and the woman's not only gonna say, I'll give you water, but the camels, because no one's ever gonna do that. So like every time he sets like something up, God makes it happen because God wants this to happen. So he actually sets up failure and he can't fail, right? Like he wants it to fail, but it won't fail. Like again, yeah, I don't want this to work, but every time I try to stop it from working, that's why it's a little bit like Tommy Boy with David Spade and Chris Farley. I'm just saying that's a bad example, and I don't think anyone's ever made a biblical comparison to Chris Farley, David Spade. But there is that element of a guy who works for a father who doesn't want the son to succeed. And so that is a possibility all along, that every time that Eliezer says, oh yeah, I hope this, he's really like crossing his fingers and going, yeah, it's not going to work. Please let it not work. So there is that possibility. So just saying, it's not the only possibility. Judith, you're right. Maybe he's just going to go, hey, I'm going to try it here, and then I'm going to move on. I'll get this done. There's another possibility where he goes, hey, Abraham, I tried. I couldn't find a kid. I couldn't find a daughter for your,
what were the sages, what was their purpose in, because we know that they often wanted to teach a lesson or expand, but what was their purpose in wanting Eliezer to fail?
Because Eliezer and Ishmael want Abraham's stuff. So, there's a tradition that they're the two Na'arim, the two young men that go up with Isaac when he's about to sacrifice him, and they're sitting there literally back at the camels going, man, I can't wait for him to come down without Isaac, right? So there is that, like, hey, they're normal, not normal. I mean, it's kind of, obviously it's craven but people are people, and they're like most people who aren't elevated like Isaac is, who don't care about the money. By the way, it's easy to not care about money when you have money, by the way. Just want to make it clear. It's very easy to say, oh, I don't care about money when you've never worked, when you're not a servant. So that's also the psychology, if you will, of Eliezer and to some extent Ishmael, which is like, like we better figure out a way to get something here, which by the way, I mean, it's not like Abraham is necessarily going to cut them out, but they're not going to get anywhere near what Isaac's getting. So, I mean, that's the logic behind, that's the flow is they're just like normal people. They're not great. They're just kind of the average person who, again, works for the boss and would like to get a piece of the company and is going to get nothing if this plays out. So that's where it comes from. I mean, that's the lesson. The lesson is they're not bad people. They're just normal people. They're just like not, they're not Isaac. They're not Avraham. They're not, they're not those kind of people. So that's why we're not descended from them.
This is it's a very common mystery plot where the servant is secretly plotting to edge the heir out.
Yeah. It's like a
Veronica Mars, that's what.
couple like a Sherlock Holmes stories, but yeah, no, that is yeah, I mean, that's a yeah, old tried and
I'm thinking of Jackie and Shadow. Somebody's already trying to move into the nest.
yeah. So when you think about why they did it, what the lesson they were trying to teach, yeah, this is, and by the way, I will tell you this, at least by the midrashic, by the rabbinic period and where the midrash goes, the midrash doesn't encourage people to have multiple wives. The rabbis didn't. The famous line from Hillel, right, was more wives, more witchcraft, and they didn't want to encourage, especially as they moved away from being a tribal society, and it just didn't make sense anymore. The idea of having multiple wives and having this, there's already infighting amongst brothers and sisters anyways, but to make it so that you have different households that are doing this, the rabbis really don't like that. And so every opportunity they have to make that type of situation look bad, they do it. It is part of it's probably their experience. They know what happens when this happens, because it happens within full brothers, let alone half brothers. So they definitely take every opportunity to make this type of situation not the situation you want to have. So yeah, I mean, it's bad enough you have these laws of primogeniture and where the oldest gets twice as much as the next kids. I mean, these are biblical laws that they have to deal with, and the rabbis know, like, the oldest child isn't necessarily the best child, which again the Bible also undermines, as we're going to see in Genesis. They as much as this is a tradition, the Bible itself tells you, yeah, sometimes you can't follow that tradition. Sometimes it doesn't work. I mean, we're going to see it real soon, like in the next chapter. So, yeah, that's the motivation. All right. So here he tells the story.
I came today to the spring, and I said, O Eternal One, God of my master Abraham, if you would indeed grant success to the errand on which I am engaged, as I stand by the spring of water, let the young woman who comes out to draw, and to whom I say, please let me drink a little water from your jar, and who answers, you may drink, and I will also draw for your camels. Let her be the wife whom God has decreed for my master's son. I had scarcely finished praying in my heart when Rebekah came out with her jar on her shoulder and went down to the spring and drew. And I said to her, please give me a drink. She quickly lowered her jar and said, drink, and I will also water your camels. So I drank, and she also watered the camels. I inquired of her, whose daughter are you? And she said, the daughter of Bethuel, son of Nahor, whom Milcah bore to him. And I put the ring on her nose and the bands on her arms.
Okay, so he retells the whole story, which, by the way, like, he could have just said, the Bible could have, the writer could have simply said, and he recounted everything that had happened at the well. They can do that. They've done that. They do that. But yet they continue this story. They continue this story at a level of detail that kind of haven't seen before. We will see it more in Genesis moving forward, especially in the Jacob and Joseph stories. But we're getting this like level of storytelling that we don't have, we haven't really seen too much of. But yeah,
The
this is,
name Rebecca means bound. What's
pardon
it
me?
mean? The name Rebecca means bound.
Yeah, where did you read that?
I don't. I just something came. I'm old. These memories come in. I have
No,
no
no,
idea.
no. It's interesting because, you know, when people look at where or why she would be given that name, it sounds like, is that a negative, right? To be bound, to tie or to bind. It's interesting because in a way, what she is she's what ties the family together. She's what kind of, makes the story continuous. She's the link, if you will. So when we look at Rebecca and who she is, bound seems like, she's like, well, it's kind of interesting because Isaac is bound, right? He's part of the Akedah, but I mean, that was her name. But if 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 you look at the name, it winds up meaning something that could be read as the 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 tie that binds the family together, the story together, Genesis together. But yeah, I mean, it seems kind of a maybe a negative, but it really obviously is not. It doesn't seem that way, at least. Um, so again, here's what he says he does, how he got here.
Sorry. Then I bowed low in homage to God, and I blessed the Eternal, the God of my master Abraham, who led me on the right way to get the daughter of my master's brother for his son. And now, if you mean to treat my master with true kindness, tell me, and if not, tell me also, that I may turn right or left.
Yeah, which is another way of saying, then I'll get out of here. Right? I'll go right or left, but I'm going to leave. So there does seem to be this understanding that this is divine providence. You know, the servant does go out of his way to keep saying, God of Abraham, which seems to maybe at some level distance himself from the God of Abraham, or again, he's just letting everybody know Adonai, Adonai is the God of Abraham, right? And right now, there haven't been too many people that have been following Adonai. Though the rabbis do like to tell us that Adonai has always been there, and like people would have had a chance to know Adonai, but they haven't been. So like the rabbis will tell you in the Midrash that Isaac during this whole time has been educated by Shem and Eber, his ancestors, who taught Avraham, who are also now teaching him. So this idea that there's been this knowledge that's been going on, and it's just a matter of reconnecting it, making sure people, get the real details directly from God. That's a possibility too. The rabbis don't really like the idea that people completely forgot about God. That there was like some people that were keeping the old ways. But again, however this is being brought forth, we're keeping this in the family, right? This is your family. Rebecca will be going to a very wealthy part of the family. It is not in Padan Aram. It is in Canaan, which is kind of a little off the grid. Not even Santa Clarita. It's probably Lancaster, maybe even Mojave for these people. This is not near the big centers of Fertile Crescent life in Mesopotamia. Is that much further. A little closer to Egypt, by the way, too, but still far from Egypt. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. So maybe it's not even Lancaster or Mojave. Maybe it's Mettler or somewhere off the 5 in the middle between San Francisco and Los Angeles, where you might get off but you only are going to the bathroom and getting a drink. Maybe Los Baños. No, that's even too far north. Anyway, somewhere like there, somewhere between LA and
King City.
Peak City. Yeah. Well, if you're on the 101. So yes, it is a stop on the way. And that's the downside, right? The downside is they're going to lose Rebekah. She's going to go live in Huppetsville, as they would say in Yiddish, and they're going to, yeah, they're going to not probably ever see this daughter again, but they are going to get paid, which we're going to get to right now. And by the way, notice here, Bethuel is here in the discussion. Now it's clear that Bethuel is here because it says Laban. Let's read this.
Then Laban and Bethuel answered, "The matter was decreed by God. We cannot speak to you bad or good. Here is Rebekah before you. Take her and go, and let her be a wife to your master's son, as God has spoken."
Seems like the deal is done. Not yet. Let's wait. There's more.
When Abraham's servant heard their words, he bowed low to the ground before God. The servant brought out objects of silver and gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah, and he gave presents to her brother and her mother.
Now, the rabbis point out, what about the dad? Why is the dad not getting anything? So he's noticeably not in the payment process here. Well, first of all, the mother also gets some stuff, which again, we do not know her name. We know Milcah's name. We know grandmother's name. We don't know Rebekah's mom's name. We do learn about her nurse in a moment, which is interesting. There's a possibility that something weird is going on here, which the rabbis make it even weirder, which is that somewhere between this scene beginning and the end scene, Bethuel is no longer alive. It's weird, but here's the midrash on it. The midrash is that when Bethuel and Laban see the money, see all this stuff, they go nuts, right? Like this isn't just a payday. This is insane. And they're not really that great when it comes to necessarily taking care of their sister and daughter. Like Rebekah is going to zip out of there as soon as she can because these are not good people. So, and this is, of course, based partly on Laban's behavior later on when he takes advantage of his nephew, Jacob. Because remember, Jacob's his nephew. So Rebekah's son is his nephew.
But if they're not good people, why did they go back there to get another wife?
Oh, Judith, it's a great question, right? What do you think the answer to that question is? What do you think?
It's tribal. They're going back because they're part of the tribe and they want
That would be the logical
Here's-
that would be the logical possibility.
But
The logical possibility is your family is still better than strangers. No, the rabbis go a little further than that. As bad as these people are, and they are family, the Canaanites are worse.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the take.
But they
The
don't
take
even
is-
believe in, we know that they don't worship God the same way. I mean, they have idols, right?
Correct, but at least they recognize to some extent that their family member, Abraham, who's started a new religion, who started a new faith, and again, the rabbis would say, has rediscovered the old faith, the real faith, the one that goes back to Adam, the creator, the one who did all this.
Okay.
That
All right.
people have been loading people away from this. And again, Canaan, who's the son of Ham, who's horrible, blah, 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 everything, everybody. And again, in the Midrash, yeah, these people are creepy, but they're creepy on a scale of they're just really bad, selfish people, not Canaanites. Like marrying amongst the Canaanites for the for the rabbinic mind is that is not, you can't do that. That can't happen, which seems to be what, to some extent what Abraham says, but it's like they can't even comprehend that. Yeah, so that's where that comes from. So the Midrash, Bethuel, in seeing all this wonderful wealth, I'm telling you, it's bad. So when I tell you the Canaanites are worse, here's the Midrash. Bethuel decides he's going to kill Eliezer. He's going to poison him. And he's going to take the money. He's like, we're going to keep our daughter and we're going to take his money. So they poison him. They decide they're going to poison his cup. But you and I already know there's an angel here. So the angel does the old switching of the cup, gives the cup back to Bethuel. And Bethuel ends up dying from the poison that he was going to give to Eliezer. It's the old Princess Bride.
And Hamlet.
Right. So that you're right. He's the Hamlet, not Wallace Shawn. Inconceivable. It's the amazing the mind of the Midrash, which is that's why Bethuel is not there now. Laban is now negotiating. But the other possibility is the mothers and Laban being the brother within that mother's household is the one who's in charge kind of this part, right? So the gifts are really it's staying in the family, but it's staying with the mother's house, which I like. I mean, I actually believe that's what really is going on here, is that the mother and brother, that house, which Laban is kind of in charge of because he's the son of the woman whose name we don't know, he's the one who is running that household with his sister and mother. That's what I believe is happening. I mean, I believe that's the logical answer, but he's not mentioned there. Also, that's a pretty dramatic thing that Rebekah's dad just died, but it's there. All right.
The servant brought out objects of silver and gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah, and he gave presents to her brother and her mother. Then he and those who came with him ate and drank, and they spent the night. When they arose next morning, he said, "Give me leave to go to my master." But her brother and her mother said, "Let the maiden remain with us some 10 days, then you may go." He said to them, "Do not delay me now that God has made my errand successful. Give me leave that I may go to my master."
Yeah, and part of this now is, by the way, where were these other people that were there with Eliezer? We don't read about anybody else who's there before. Now,
They said it was an entourage before.
It said kind of, it didn't say, didn't say 10. It didn't say, well, there's 10 camels. So we assume that there's other people. But now we have it, that there's other people that are also eating and drinking. Now, why does the maiden have to remain? Well, the Midrash helps explain that by saying, yeah, our dad just died. So, you gotta give us a shiva. Doesn't, let us be there 10. It doesn't say 10 days. That's why the note says days of 10. Yamim O means like, obviously somehow it means like 10 days, but he says, no, we're leaving. We're going right away. I got to get back. So there seems to be this weird, like, why are they trying to keep him? Which again, if you think about it from the fact that Eliezer knows that they just tried to kill him, and that's how Bethuel died. He's like, now I'm getting out of here. I'm not going to spend 10 days with people who are trying to kill me. So that's also part of the Midrash, which is, I got to get out of here. And I got to get Rebekah out of here because these are bad people. Now, again, seeing as how Rebekah is going to wind up sending her own son, Jacob, back to these bad people, if they are indeed that bad. But I mean, Laban's not a good guy based on what we know later. So anyways, he says, I'm getting out of here. And again, 56 verses we've read. 56 verses. As I told you, creation story is like 40 verses. The Akedah is 20-something verses. I mean, this is a long story, a long story.
And they said, let us call the girl and ask for her reply. They called Rebekah and said to her, will you go with this man? And she said, I will. So they sent off their sister Rebekah and her nurse, along with Abraham's servant and his entourage. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, O sister, may you grow into thousands of myriads. May your descendants seize the gates of their foes.
Okay, so this is the goodbye scene, if you will. First of all, Rebekah says one word in Hebrew, elech. I will go.
Similar to Hineni.
Similar to, yes, or
Lech lecha.
Lech lecha, exactly. It's the same. When God says to Abraham, Lech lecha, he answers, right? Or he does. But look at what she does. She does this without God telling her to do it, right? She says, I will go, and literally changes human history because she has the faith to do this. She has the faith to do it without God saying it to her directly, right? Because Abraham has God telling him to do it. She says she'll do it without even having that knowledge, that assurance that it's God that's saying it. So what she does is quite amazing. It's quite powerful. It is maybe one of the, at this stage, you can make the argument it's the greatest act of courage done by anybody so far in the Bible, because she does not have God telling her. And if she doesn't do it, think about what's at stake. Think about what doesn't happen if she doesn't go. She leaves her home, she leaves her parents, she leaves her country, she leaves everything for a man that she's never met. So her faith, to some extent, is even more amazing than Abraham's faith. I mean, I'd argue that what she does is, it's as hard to some extent as what Abraham does, though Abraham, you can also say, had his wife already. He already was a grown man, knowing that, yeah, it's going to be tough. But this woman, as a man, this woman has no knowledge of what she's going into.
Unless her
And
family really is that bad and she just wants to get out.
That's the other side. That's the side that the Midrash goes, get this woman out of this home as soon as she can. Now, again, you got to be careful. I mean, the rabbis can't go too far, because if Rebekah sends Jacob into a den of vipers, then something wrong with her. So, she doesn't, at least maybe you can make the argument she's not as aware of how bad they are. But then again, it's still an act of faith. So you have to be careful, knowing that she's going to send Jacob there eventually. And you don't necessarily know that if you don't remember it, but I'm telling you that one way or the other, this is a tremendous act of faith leaving. Because again, I mean, why would she send Jacob back there? I mean, again, it's part of the rabbinic cycle would be because she just really doesn't want her son to marry a Canaanite that is worth even throwing him in with these people.
Unless
But
she knows just how smart and how clever her son is, and she's like, I'm going to get my revenge on those horrible people, send them my child, and he's going to steal all their sheep.
interestingly, I've not heard that midrash before, but it's entirely consistent with who Rebekah is, that she's like, oh, I got a way to get them back now. I'm sending my son. So he's going to take everything. But that's a good midrash. I mean, that's a good midrash, which goes along with the fact that, again, the very least, Laban and his and the family seem very materialistic. At the very least, they seem to be very taken with the stuff, and but yeah, I mean, how bad they are, and whether that's even a better story is that, yeah, she sends Jacob back to clear out and get everything else. That's a good story. That's a story that you could see play out. You could have You could have a Western version of that story. You could have, it's a good, it's a good miniseries. You have an English, some English, you know, Downton Abbey version of this story. Yeah, I'm sure it's been done, but
French.
it's a good,
French.
it's a
It's a
good,
French story. Or maybe no, it's an Italian story.
maybe.
That's
But
that's
it's a good,
Sorrento in
it's
Naples.
a good story of having the son come back to get back everything yeah. Anyways, it's interesting too that we read about this woman that's sent along, which also seems a little Italian or whatever. Seems like Romeo and Juliet. We don't know the nurse's name here. We learn it later. We learn her name is Deborah, and we actually read about her death in Genesis chapter 35. We read about her dying and being buried. She seems to be a very important person in Rebekah's life. And there's two possibilities. She's a surrogate mother, or she's more of a sister. The sister one seems, or somewhere in between, an older sister, but it seems a little bit more logical based on maybe when she dies, but she's clearly an important woman who we don't know a lot about. She does appear obviously in the Midrash because got to know more about her. But yeah, I mean, so she goes along. She's gonna be a part of Rebekah's life, in her new home. She'll be a little piece of back home with her, reminder of Padan Aram.
Is there any, have there been any theories that there is a whole other set of scrolls that
Tell the woman's side.
tell the woman? I mean, we joke about it, but they occasionally, like you said, especially right here, they mention women that seem to be really important to the story, but they don't have a story. So I know the rabbis and the sages create one, but does anyone ever talk about the possibility that there really was another story and that it was taken out as a way to keep women under the thumb of
So I know what you're saying. So the problem is it doesn't appear from a literary standpoint, from the standpoint of like people who study like what would be missing, which is it's always a tough thing to do, but it's wild to hear these people talk about like what's not there and how we know that it wouldn't have been. Look, it's more likely that there was these oral stories that existed and they just didn't tell that as part of the story. They didn't write down the oral part of the story. That seems to be the logical place. Not that there was a scroll, they were writing from the scroll and they didn't keep that part. Because it seems written with it built in, like the missing part is written in. It's not like there's like a paragraph missing, and so it's just written in that way, which means it's like somebody intentionally wrote it that way.
But there's almost an assumption. There's almost an assumption that the reader knows that story or knows that information is out there.
Maybe. I mean, look, there's definitely a possibility that there's stories in the e-author, for example, that we don't have because when they edited the J&E stories together, because we believe the J&E stories were edited together first, and then the p-author was added later. So we believe that there was editing, obviously stuff that was taken out of the J&E versions, that there could have been more stuff about some of the women, but there's also, again, just the J author, which has more stories about women. They're just written in a way that the woman's name or the role of that woman wasn't there. The J author didn't take the time to write down Noah's wife's name. I mean, he just didn't. It's not there. Why did they say his wife and not the lady's name? So
Right, but they talk about Lilith. They talk about Eve. They give them names. They give Deborah a name.
Well, Lilith isn't given a name in the text, right?
That's right.
Lilith is just assumed to have been in the background. But when we see things that seem to be in the background, then the question is, well, it probably was there's probably an oral story that they didn't bother writing down, or again, everyone knew it, they assumed it, they didn't have to say it. But like the story of the Nephilim in Genesis chapter 6, it just seems like everyone knew the story. So we're not going to retell the story. You know it, it's shorthand. Here it is. This is the giants, blah, 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 and done. But there also seems to be like, we don't need to go the route that there was a scroll that they just edited it, they took this piece and not that piece. I mean, okay, there was, but that's not the answer for why these women are not mentioned. For the most part, the male writers did not, in most cases, intentionally, like they just didn't think. It seems to me like they didn't do it intentionally. They didn't also intentionally include information about women, but the information about the women we have tells us that the women are important. Because again, this is I was going to make this point. Rebekah's servant being mentioned here is Rebekah's nurse. She's called a nurse. And again, the word is connected to it's usually the word used for wet nurse. So sometimes you'll even see it say wet nurse. So again, really is a surrogate mom. But you see the role of women here in this story, how important the women are as the women who run the house, or again, a woman who's necessary for Rebekah's journey. I mean, Rebekah is going to leave. The only thing she really takes with her is Deborah. So yeah, this is another example of how, as I said before, there are several instances here where we're going to see that women are the driving force of this story, not least of which Rebekah is without a doubt more present in this generation than her husband. She's has much more of an active role and is the prime mover in this generation. So
Rabbi, just to underscore what you're saying, from a narrative point of view, this entire scene is unnecessary. And a lot of editors, if this were a later novel, would cut it out because the protagonists are Abraham and Isaac, obviously. The role of the matchmaker, in this case, Eliezer, is generally the matchmaking process is ignored, and the matchmaker brings back Rebekah, and that's where the story would go naturally. They're at home. Here comes Rebekah, and this whole story might unfold that way. But no, we're taken away from the main plot. We're taken away from the protagonists, and we're brought to this minor character in terms of the Bible, Eliezer, or whoever the servant is. And we're told this entire story for so many verses that it has to underscore what you're saying, that the woman, or the women in this case, really play a much more major role than it would be in any other narrative. And I'm done talking.
No, that's very, that's, I appreciate it, because again, that is for somebody who's taught, literature for a long time. This is why the literary aspects of this are just astounding. Again, we're in verse 60. We're 60 in a book which is trying to teach us like where we came from. Now, I will say this, when we read this section, we're actually now just got to a point where we actually have a piece of text that is a vital part of Jewish history. In verse 60, for thousands of years, Jewish people have preserved the words of Laban. That's right. Does anybody know when we say this? Getting a little teared up as I read this. So we are supposed to say these words to a bride just before she goes out to get married. People have heard the word bedecken before, right? The Yiddish word bedecken, which is obviously very similar to the English word to bedeck. The bedekin is a ceremony which we don't do so much anymore, but we have for thousands of years. It's been a tradition, which is, and people sometimes they get this wrong. They explain it wrong. They don't really understand where it comes from because it's different from maybe the rituals that are done at a wedding that are, non-Jewish, Gentile weddings. But technically speaking, right before a bride goes out, the family puts the veil over her face, the bride. So they pull the veil down and they say, as they say goodbye to their daughter/sister, these words. The Alfai Revava. Vayrosh Zarecha et Shar Sonav, which is pretty positive in the sense that may you have lots of descendants, right? May you have lots of doesn't have to be just children, but your descendants and descendants and descendants will grow. Second part is, and when
A
they go
little
to war,
militant.
when they go to war, let them knock down their enemies' gates. Which again, it doesn't say, and then they murder them and kill them all, but let them not have any problems when they go to war, that they are able to overcome any of their enemies. Which again, one could say, and when they ever have any, the modern version of this is, and when they have problems, let them be able to take down their problems. But it's a beautiful saying. And it's become for thousands of years. We incorporated this guy's who's not, again, at the very least, he's just, he's a little bit of a schmuck, who's into money. But yeah, we've incorporated his words and made them part of our tradition, that when we say goodbye to the bride, that we say that. So oftentimes the rabbi will say it because he's the only one who knows that this is sometimes said. But yeah, it's something, it definitely has lost its resonance a little bit today because it sounds kind of tribal, but there is a beauty to it, which is we're hoping that you become a very important matriarch in your own right. Whatever that means. Again, nowadays it's difficult to tell a bride, go out and have a lot of kids, when some of them don't want to have kids. So it's not necessarily, politically correct or appropriate or kind to say that to somebody who either can't or doesn't want to have children. But the idea of sending a woman out at her marriage and saying to her, we hope you're successful by the standards of whatever generation you live in, that you become a successful woman and that you get stuff done. So it's a nice tradition, obviously. I mean, the intent is positive, even if again, some people might find it outdated. But to say to the woman before she kind of steps into a new role, I hope you're successful. So there should at least be some recognition of that. Yeah. Ugh. People have asked me now that they know now I have two daughters getting married in the next, I think 14 months. We'll have two weddings. So both of my daughters have assumed that, that I'm officiating at the wedding. So people have said, that's going to be hard to do. Yeah, it's going to be hard to do, seeing as I'm tearing up thinking about it now. But there's the question of like the role that I have as a father. Am I walking her down the aisle and then
You're gonna walk around the aisle and turn around and
whipping around? So I don't know. We'll figure out the logistics of this. I'll leave it to them.
what do the Anglicans do? They must have this all the time.
But we'll figure that out. I don't know. Maybe these people who are smarter don't officiate, but I'll do it, whatever my daughters decide to do. But yeah, we're in these discussions today over, yeah, Judith might even know this, that we're in these discussions today over, what happens with last names and those kind of things. So, yeah, these are big questions now that we're dealing with. But yeah, sending out a daughter into this new role of being a matriarch is it's an important one. And I think, you know, as a father, and again for men, and so for the people who don't have daughters here, let me just explain that I think it's very important for men to make sure that their daughters are prepared for the next stages of their lives. And you know um that's the that's the challenge of what a father of a daughter has, which is on one hand to protect them and to make sure that they're safe, but at the other hand to make sure that they're strong enough to be independent and to make decisions and to some extent to be like Rebekah, which again for me is she's one of the, as I mentioned last week, she's one of my favorite people in the whole Bible, but definitely as a matriarch or patriarch, to me she stands out as somebody who embodies Jewish tradition and Jewish values, maybe the best. Make that
As a mother of daughters, it's hard to let them go. It's very
yeah.
hard.
I'm sure it's a different dynamic, and it's definitely something that I think is women have, but I can't, I can't speak to that as a person who's not experienced that, but I will tell you that that it is a tough, it's a it's a weird balancing act, to do that. And again, do your best, but it is, you wonder too, like, what kind of role model you're being as a father, is saying, well, is the person that she's going to marry be like me or whatever, it's like there's always this weird, balancing act that you have to do. And yeah, I can only speak to that, but yeah, this sending a woman off with this kind of blessing, hopefully we'll discuss it. Maybe I'll discuss this with my daughters. We'll do our own lesson on what this means. So let's read the last parts of, yeah, I'm choked up just thinking about it. So uh here's the story, the way the story finishes.
Then Rebekah and her maids arose, mounted the camels, and followed the man. So the servant took Rebekah and went his way. Isaac had just come back from the vicinity of Beer-lahai-roi, where he was settled in the region of the Negev. And Isaac went out walking in the field toward evening, and looking up, he saw camels approaching.
So um so they leave. And it's a pretty quick exit in the sense that, like, they got on and they went back to Canaan. And it says that they're in Be'er Lahai Roi, which is well of Sin, right? This is the well that's mentioned during this times of Abraham and Hagar. And he's walking in that area. And again, the word here is lasoach, which is not the normal word for walking, which again, some translations, I don't know. Mary, do you have a different translation in the King James for 63? As Isaac went out blank in the field, or glory? I don't know if your Bible is open, if you have your translation.
It says, and Isaac went out to meditate in the field at
Yeah.
eventide.
Yeah, which is the other possibility here. So there seems to be, this isn't just a normal walk, maybe it's a walkabout. He's walking and meditating, which is a form, there is a form of meditation that is a walking meditation. Some people walk, they'll walk one of the mazes or the labyrinth walking that people will do. But he seems to be meditating. He seems to be praying. So the rabbis actually say that this is the institution of the mincha service, that it's the late afternoon, evening before that, eventide, whatever the translation is, before erev, before evening. And this is the institution of the mincha service. But they like the idea that people prayed in the afternoon, maybe. So he sees this allows him to have this meeting here. This is the last few verses.
Raising her eyes, Rebekah saw Isaac. She alighted from the camel and said to the servant, "Who is that man walking in the field toward us?" And the servant said, "That is my master." So she took her veil and covered herself.
So notice this is a covering, right? So this veiling, this bedecken, if you will, is alluded to here by her action of veiling herself when she sees him, which is interesting because, doesn't she want him to see her, in her full beauty, right? See the whole face, but she actually covers herself. So it means she wasn't covered before.
Yeah.
Now she's covering herself.
The servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. Isaac then brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah, and he took Rebekah as his wife. Isaac loved her and thus found comfort after his mother's death.
67 verses. And the last couple of verses are like typical Bible verses. So you want to know whether the servant could have told the people back at the house all the things he had done? It's right there. There's the line. That line could have saved 10 verses. But yet we had the repetition of it. It draws out that scene, makes that scene longer. And now here, when we really want to have more, when we want to hear everything, we don't. But yet it's so powerfully compacted because literally the last verse, which is a few clauses, but if you look at what happens here, it's really very powerful. So Isaac, first of all, brings her into the tent of his mother, Sarah, right? So bringing her into the tent is now making her the head of the household, right? She's now taking her place as a matriarch, which again, for the sages, the tent of Sarah is wow, all that power, all that energy in that tent is now hers. So she's the inheritor of her mother, being that presence of Sarah. So it says he took her as his wife and he loved her. That doesn't always happen. We don't always have that. He loves her. That's the word. Yehaveha. He loved her. So there actually was, as much as this is a arranged marriage, 100% it's a marriage of being a shidduch. He loves her. So again, the rabbis like to point out that this is why a traditional shidduch works, because it's not based on attraction. It's not based on the stuff that our marriages are usually based on today. There's something so much deeper here. And so what do they see in each other? What do they love in each other? I mean, this is something that they understand to be something completely special. To me, it's one of the most beautiful lines in the Bible, because through his love for her, he finds comfort after his mother's death, which, by the way, think about what that implies too, which is that he was devastated after his mother died. So it shows you how important Sarah was.
Yeah, because his father tried to kill him.
Okay, well, look, okay,
That's a good point.
maybe he did like his mom more, but whatever happens with his father and his relationship, which they never have a conversation again after the Akedah, by the way, which means they only have one conversation in the Bible. I mean, Laban and Eliezer have a longer conversation than Isaac and Abraham ever do. But yeah, he loves his mother and he's comforted after her death. And again, the wedding and the funeral are linked here without doubt, because his hope, his his feelings of being able to maybe even be happy again comes about because he has this love for Rebekah. So it's one line, but it's so much there. There's so much compacted into that line. And to me, it's one of the most powerful lines in there because it talks about his love for it. It talks about the loss that he had, and to know, that like light has come back into his life. It's really powerful. And it also tells you how important women were. And you can't read this chapter without understanding how important biblical women are, because again, Judith's point is like, where's the text? Like, we know there must have been a text like this, maybe, but at the very least, our text shows you the implication of whether or not you mention the names, even if you don't tell their story from their vantage point. Genesis is clear that women are driving the story. Throughout the story, it's women doing amazing things at the right time that keeps us alive. So if you don't see that, you literally are focusing on the wrong thing. You're paying attention to the fact that, yeah, there's women not named, and it is written from a male point of view, but written into the text is a line like this, which basically says the guy was devastated by his mother's death and finally finds hope and life by his marriage, by his relationship with his wife. So it's there. You don't need a midrash to explain that to you, to help clarify it. Right there. So to me, it's a wonderful story of love and of somebody finding, of finding peace after they've lost somebody. Again, I mean, it's not like, you don't want somebody to only be happy because they're getting married, but it's maybe a little dysfunctional if you're, but I mean, think about how amazing this woman is, which is she comforts her husband and is the link through the Jewish people. And as much as we talk about Moses and we talk about even Abraham and David and all these characters, the story really tells us that if Rebekah doesn't go, there's none of this. It's over, right? It's not. It comes down to this. It comes down to having faith, having courage, loving somebody, and how a simple meeting at a well, can change history. So it's really, to me, again, about relationships and about hope and about the fact that people can bring out the best in us. And it's amazing. It's amazing. Anybody, so we finished up today this story of love. Floyd, please share this story share the story that you just shared about the shotgun, about the matchmaker.
You can do it.
Okay, I'd like you to do it, but I'll do it. Here's the story. A seriously Orthodox family is unhappy that their rebellious and entitled 28-year-old son still hasn't married. So to move things along, they bring in a shotgun, a matchmaker. As you'd expect, the shotgun asks the young man a number of questions about himself and the kind of partner he would want to meet. And the son responds, as you also might expect. She should be attractive, well-educated, spirited, intelligent, and with a good sense of humor, and so on. 3 weeks later, the shotgun returns and meets the boy and his family. He tells them about Rebekah, right? Who is beautiful, educated, comes from a wonderful family, is eager to have children, and meets all the other requirements the young man and his parents have mentioned. The parents are already planning the wedding, but their son seems hesitant. Is something wrong? Says the shotgun. Well, I meant to ask you, the son says. This girl, is she good in bed? The parents are shocked. But if the shotgun is phased, he doesn't show it. Well, he replies, that's a tough one. Some say yes, some say no. How did I get through that?
Oh,
Took all my wherewithal not to, because I know the punchline of it is so bad. That- I hope I didn't ruin it. Floyd, you should have told him, but I couldn't keep a straight face during it. Anyway, some say yes, some say no. Terrible. Thank you, Floyd, for that reminder of Jewish humor. Oh, God. Yes. All right. Well, I'm glad we could end with a laugh. And I was laughing so hard I'm crying. But yeah, it's also funny we talk about this because we're producing probably a show on in the coming weeks in JLTV about traditional shotguns, like today, ones who are really doing it. And I was hesitant to do it because so much of I hate this stuff. And I told the guy who's producing it is Orthodox, but I told the guy who's producing it, who's Orthodox, I said, look, I trust that you'll do it, but I can't stand watching this. I really don't like to see people, even if it's done in a serious professional way, I don't like seeing people's personal lives spilled out on camera. Like that's a level of modesty that I think I'm sure like if it's done well, it's gonna work, it'll be a hit because people love this stuff. But it's amazing how in the traditional communities that people still use a shotgun to set up weddings. I mean, there's literally thousands of marriages that are being contracted right now in the United States and Israel, where people literally will not meet until there's an understanding that like they'll get to meet before the wedding, but they're meeting because they're getting married. They're not meeting because they're dating. There's no dating here. They'll go out a couple times with a chaperone or in public, and then they'll have to make the decision. It's like twice. You don't get a lot of chances to meet, which is why that joke is also very funny, because yeah, the expectation of sneud, of modesty, of sneas, as they say, is such that yeah, they're not even going to be alone before the marriage. So thousands of times every day, there's marriages, of Jewish marriages that happen. I mean, if you think about it, that's a huge percentage of marriages between Jews today. Because again, look, I mean, if the interfaith marriage rate is 50%, 60%, primarily in the non-Orthodox world, that means like of marriages between two Jews. I mean, think about it. I mean, I don't think a lot of people really. I don't think a lot of people in the Jewish community think about this. And endogamy rates are, by the way, ridiculously high if you consider how few there Jews there are in the United States and how many Jewish marriages still take place. But when you think about it, if two Jews are meeting each other and getting married, a very high percentage of them are actually arranged marriages today. I mean, we don't think about it. I've never heard anybody make that point before, but it actually is true. So it's almost, if two Jews meet today and get married, it's almost accidental. Judith just asked, does it count for same sex? I don't know that someone has, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I don't know if the endogamy rate today, I don't know if they're including those. Probably not. It probably hasn't, probably I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't think they do. I'm not sure though. I don't know. I don't even know where they're getting most of those the data from today anyways. I don't know where the interfaith marriage, I don't know when, if the last one was the 2020 survey they did just before COVID. I'm not 100 sure. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I don't think it does. Anyways, it is a interesting thing to contemplate here. I just had 2 weddings that I officiated at in the last couple of weeks, and it's always for me one of the obviously more exciting things I do, but it's also to some extent like it's also not that I feel responsibility for the couple to be happy, but like I really want the couple, if I'm officiating a wedding, I want to make sure that I want to know that they're going to have a happy life together. And that's always like, it doesn't have, thankfully I've had a pretty good rate, I've had a pretty good
I was
rate.
about to ask, what's your rate?
It seems to be pretty good anecdotally. Like the people that I don't know very well, that I was referred to. That's the other thing too, is most of the people that I do weddings for, I usually do know them better than the people that I'm doing funerals for now to some extent. But yeah, there's a lot of people who, like if I'm less connected to it, I won't even know. So, but I've done a lot less weddings now than I've done funerals. So it's yeah, the numbers, but a funeral is like, once it's done, it's kind of over. The funeral is like, you have a chance to do it, it's over. The wedding is just the beginning. So yeah, you kind of hope that, I'll usually joke like this last week, I did the Hershenson wedding I told you up in Portland, and I saw them the next morning, and I'm like, you guys are still married, right? So I was like, that's the longest wedding so far. I'll make a joke like that, but I mean, I hope, I hope if I get to be part of something like that, I hope it's long lasting, and I hope it's good. So on that note, I'd rather end on, some say yes, some say no. So take care, everybody. Have a good rest of the week, and join us Shabbat with Wendy. We have Havdalah at the beach.
In the beach,
And then, of course,
Saturday.
tomorrow night we have Jewish Journey. We're going to be looking at Jewish musicians, and thank you to Judith's mother-in-law, Arlene, who gave us some nice articles that we're going to put up on the website for people to look at some of these. She's done many, many profiles of Jewish musicians for her community in Florida. And so we're going to post them up for our community as well. Some interesting stories about Jewish musicians. Some of them, probably, well, all of them you'll know, but some of them you won't know much about their Jewish history. And she went into the Jewish aspects of their identity. So that's very cool. So anyways, take care, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.
Bye-bye.